Mike thought I was going to miss a second day in a row. Right off the bat, before we even fire up the microphones and click live, Mike in Texas says, think MIA Corey will be joining us today? Well, here I am. I'm ready to go. Let's do this. I was on the road yesterday. I was coming back from...
I tried to tell them that.
Obviously, Orchard Park. You know, DK and I hitting the road together, and there was some snow on the ground in Erie. The most snow that we saw on this trip was leaving the hotel in Erie, Pennsylvania to come back home on Tuesday. So, like, you know, it's a good thing they moved the game. Do not get me wrong. I'm not going to start that. I'm glad they moved the game. Seeing everything in Orchard Park on Sunday was absolutely miserable. I'm glad they moved the game. It was a much better experience on Monday. But now, Chris, we get to talk about the offseason as obviously the Steelers, a wild card round exit to the Bills. He's Chris Halicke. I'm Corey Crisan. This is, of course, the Southside Beat, as we are Monday through Friday, 3 to 3:30-ish Eastern, here on DK Pittsburgh Sports. And Chris, step one. What is it? That's what we're talking about. We got to start at the start here with this offseason.
Yeah.
We have to figure out how are the Steelers going to make these improvements going into 2024. Obviously, a long road between now and August/September. Obviously, a long road between now and Latrobe. A long road between now and April even, where there's an NFL draft. But step one has to start today.
Yeah.
Where do they go? That's what we're going to get into today.
Well, I think we're really not going to get any true answers on that until Mike Tomlin addresses the media.
Mm-hmm.
Because obviously we know that they've got to hire an offensive coordinator because, you know, it's not like Eddie Faulkner was immediately deemed the full offensive coordinator. It had the tag interim, you know, next to it. So
yep.
The Steelers will go through a process in which they interview candidates. And obviously the big question based off of precedent is how do they go about that interview process? Does it include several in-house candidates? We know Glenn Thomas is leaving to go to a college job. It's really interesting to see how that's going to go. But as much as I want to like touch on offensive coordinators and I've already, like, I'm doing live cues on the site today. If you haven't, you know, stop by and dropped a question in there, drop one in. But I've even already had questions about offensive coordinators. Alex Van Pelt was obviously fired, you know, and so the former Browns offensive coordinator. And so I got a question about him. As much as I would like to address offensive coordinator, I think we really need to hear what Mike Tomlin has to say first. And maybe that's just the reporter in me. I don't know. Like, I understand I'm not, you know, on the beat anymore or anything like that. But the reporter in me was like, I want to hear what the head coach has to say, not only regarding his status, because he already addressed the team but just overall his reflection on the season and how they go into the offseason. I want to hear his perspective on that.
Yeah, and what direction does he envision taking this thing? If he's going to stay, and it sounds like he's going to stay, and he tells the team he's going to stay, he's going to stay. And look, before we get into anything further about Mike Tomlin staying, like, yeah, Mike Tomlin could say all that, but Art Rooney could decide differently. So it's not to say that Art Rooney's going to, but it's not off the table. This is still very early stage in the offseason.
That would be the only person who says Mike Tomlin can't coach next year.
Exactly. Now, Robert says, when does Mike Tomlin talk to the media? We do not know yet. No word as of this moment when Mike Tomlin's going to give a press conference. He usually gives one, obviously, you know, postpartum, if you will. Postmortem, excuse me. Goodness. Postmortem right after the season ends. And we haven't been told as of right now when that's going to happen. Now, potentially tomorrow, Thursday, potentially Friday, certainly by this stage. So it's not today. It wasn't on Tuesday. They opened the locker room Tuesday. Yeah, I know, Mike. It's that kind of week. Headache and everything setting in. It's that postseason season, you know, all that. Yeah, exactly. Anyway, so not yet, but you know, obviously there's a lot to iron out, and I think Mike Tomlin will give a little bit of a preview of what's to come, so to speak, for this offseason and what's expected. Now, Barber, yeah, he's tired of talking about Mike Tomlin staying on as head coach. I think a lot of people are, because as I wrote after the Bills game, the only person that has a say in that is, and we just said it, is Art Rooney. Mike Tomlin's under contract for 1 year, which means he is contractually obligated to coach this team in 2024 unless Art Rooney says otherwise, or Mike Tomlin says otherwise. If he really was considering retiring or taking a break, so to speak, which if you know Mike Tomlin, Chris and I know him on a certain level because we're reporters, that man is as football junkie gets, and that was never going to happen. So,
all it takes is being on the beat for just a very short amount of time. Once you see how, it's one thing to watch him coach during training camp, but he also knows he's putting on a show.
Sure.
Right? He knows he's putting on a show. All those practices are open to the public and everything. Once you see how he coaches, whenever it's like week to week during the season, and those are all private practices, it's a little bit different. You see a little bit of a different side of Mike Tomlin during those practices. When you have conversations with him, like, for example, a really kind of way to peel back the curtain just a little bit. When we go cover the owners meetings that happen, usually near the end of March, all the coaches, there's an AFC day and an NFC day. All the coaches sit down and do like a breakfast roundtable type thing, but that's open to all reporters.
Yeah.
And now all the coaches are talking at the same time, so you have to kind of pick and choose which talks or which coaches you want to talk to. But a select few of the local reporters get to sit down and talk with Mike Tomlin, just kind of off on our own. And this is usually on a different day.
Casually.
Yeah. And now granted, Tomlin still kind of puts up that wall. It's not like a, hey, let's sit back and have a beer together type of conversation, but it's still a little bit. And just every moment that I've had an interaction with Tomlin, whether it be a question in a press conference, whether it be observing a practice, can confirm and then confirm again how much that man loves football. Watching him at the Senior Bowl get right up in there where the players are, the dude just eats, sleeps, lives, breathes football. Taking a year off never made sense. When the report came out yesterday, I'm like, oh, let me put on my surprised face.
Mm-hmm. That guy's as football junkie gets. I can recall over in Latrobe at training camp, and there was a dinner with the media. Mike Tomlin, Omar Khan joined, and it was very relaxed, very laid back, and getting to peel back the curtain, so to speak. And even in the moments that Mike Tomlin was not talking about the Pittsburgh Steelers, he was still talking about football in a lot of ways. There was obviously some personal stuff, and I'm not going to share any details or anything, but Mike Tomlin still talks football. That's what Mike Tomlin is. That's what Mike Tomlin does. So to think otherwise, you're just not paying attention, quite frankly. Now, this offseason is going to have to go through layers, obviously. Mm-hmm. And offensive coordinator talk, Matt asked here, any word on offensive coordinator? We have a long way to go on that. Yeah. Really, we do. And hasn't been any interviews yet. There haven't been any checks as far as who's outside going to possibly come in or be available or any of that. So we're early on the offensive coordinator search, and I'm going to write about this at some point, potentially later this week. Like, the most important piece to this offseason to me is Kenny Pickett. And it's the determination of whether it's going to be Kenny Pickett, Mason Rudolph, or somebody from the outside that's going to be the quarterback of this franchise starting in 2024 and moving forward. Now, the Steelers could have a plan. They could have it in mind. What that is now, they might not have that in mind right now. Truly, we don't know that answer as of right now. But there is one option that is definitively on the table, under contract, and that's Kenny Pickett. I would be shocked if Mitch Trubisky is not cut just based on his contract situation. That is as cut candidate gets. Mason Rudolph obviously now has played his way into options elsewhere. So whether he wants to stay in Pittsburgh or go test the free agent market again and potentially get a bridge job or a more lucrative backup job somewhere, or hell, if the Steelers want to keep him on as the starter. There are so many options that have to go forward with the quarterback. However, I love what Biad says here. Extension for Mike Tomlin, step 1, if that's what's in the cards. Step 2 is the OC. Step 3 is Mason or whoever at quarterback. And, of course, that includes Kenny Pickett.
Yeah.
That includes potential options outside. I think those are the three most important things in this offseason right there, as summed up in one sentence right there by Bayad here on the screen.
Yeah, no, I mean, we obviously can talk about quarterback, and it will be part of the conversation for a long time, for at least a couple of months, just because, Kenny's not going anywhere. He's under contract for at least another 2 years.
Yep.
Mason Rudolph, obviously he's an unrestricted free agent, but free agency doesn't begin until middle of March. So we got a ways to go before then, unless somehow they can sign him to a new contract before free agency starts. Which, if I'm Mason Rudolph, I don't do that. I want to see what's out there. I want to test the market and see what I can get. But none of that really matters until we know who the offensive coordinator is. What kind of an offense, will the Steelers have? How much of an overhaul should we expect? If it's Eddie Faulkner coming, actually being promoted to the full-time offensive coordinator, we have a little bit of a taste of what we might see. Now, granted, it wasn't necessarily his playbook that we saw. It was what he was able to do and tinker with Matt Canada's playbook, but still we kind of saw, hints in play sequencing and just in play call. I understand Mike Sullivan was a play call, but again, Eddie Faulkner has a hand in game planning, how they go into a game. So that was part of his decision. So we have a little bit of a kind of a tidbit of how that might go. Yet if it's Clint Kubiak, if Mike McCarthy gets fired from Dallas and he's all of a sudden available, if it's Alex Van Pelt, I could throw out a bunch of names. All of those guys do things differently, and who is hired will ultimately kind of dictate who is the best man for the job at quarterback. And so the Steelers could, in that interview process, say, build a playbook to support Kenny Pickett because Kenny Pickett is our guy, no matter what. Or they could bring Clint Kubiak in and say, hey, listen, our plan is for Kenny Pickett to be the guy, but if we can make something work and somehow bring Kirk Cousins in, how about you do what you did in Minnesota with Kirk and Justin Jefferson and kind of build an offense around that?
And they could go in either option or direction, or that offensive coordinator, whoever it might be, could say, listen, we picked 20th in the draft. I think we could get Jane Daniels, JJ McCarthy, Michael Penix, whoever. And that's an option.
Yeah, and that's a whole nother option. Yeah. We're not even talking about free agent. We're talking about draft and new guys and all this kind of stuff. And it's a good class this year.
But the coordinator, as Teresa says here, let's not mince words here. Teresa says, why wouldn't they get the coordinator first so they have input on the quarterback? That's what's going to happen.
Yeah.
That's the course of direction here.
Yep.
The coordinator, nothing on quarterbacks, on Mason, on Kenny, on a draft pick, on a free agent or a trade is going to be decided until the offensive coordinator is hired.
Yep.
And based on who that offensive coordinator hire is going to be the direction they go as far as the quarterback goes. So, look, Spy Guy asked about Eric Bieniemy. Is he good or available? Well, yes, he's good. He's very good. He turned Sam Howell. At one point, Sam Howell was leading the league in passing until he fell off and reverted back to a fifth-round draft pick. Eric Bieniemy is a good coordinator. I think there is a lot of potential there. However, his contract in Washington might say otherwise. Mark asks, why doesn't the NFL let reporters question officials at a press conference? Wouldn't they then hold them accountable? So that is permitted. There's a bit of a process to have to go through that. Now, it runs through the Pro Football Writers Association. And basically...
Writers of America, sorry.
Yes, Pro Football Writers of America. What am I... I'm thinking of
BBWAA.
Yes, BBW. Yep. I'm combining BBWAA with Pro Football Writers with Football Writers Association of America, which is college, which is what I'm in.
Oh, yeah.
But anyway, so the Pro Football Writers, thank you.
I know what you mean.
Basically request that they get to, one representative gets to interview the head official. There's no press conference setting ever with the head official. It is one representative of the Pro Football Writers of America, and they interview the official, and they are what's called a pool reporter. So typically what happens in these situations is there's got to be something controversial or worthy of discussion. This isn't like, oh, George Pickens, we think was held there. What did you see? Those kind of calls are all judgment calls. They always happen. And quite frankly, we won't get an answer that will satisfy anything. It'll just be the same canned, it was a judgment call response.
Yeah.
But when there's actual explanation needed, that is an option to interview an official. It's one reporter. And typically what happens is that reporter will get designated in the game. They will field questions from other reporters. Hey, Should we ask about this? Should we ask about that? What do we think about bringing this to him? And it obviously runs along in conjunction with the league, and it's that official and that reporter. And then that transcript comes out. It doesn't happen after every game, but when there's something that is so either egregious or so controversial that it simply just has to be explained, that judgment is made by the reporters, by the PFWA chapter president, who in this case here in Pittsburgh is Joe Rutter of the Trib, and of course in conjunction with the NFL. So that is an option. It just doesn't happen after every game.
No, and I think, while there were definitely some calls that weren't great in this game, I don't think anything was egregious enough or game-changing enough that you needed an explanation from the officiating crew. I really don't. Like, again, there were some bad calls. I didn't like the personal foul call on Miles Jack on the slide.
Sure.
Really cannot expect Jack to stop momentum at that point. He's already going down to try to tackle the guy. It's so bang bang. Everybody wants to look at those plays like that in slow motion and try to say, oh yeah, he had plenty of time to pull up. It's like, he really didn't. But obviously did not like the fact that there was no flag. I went on a rant about that yesterday on Connor McGovern, on the cheap shot he had on Joey Porter Jr. To me, that's not even a football play. It's just unacceptable. But nothing in the game was egregious enough and helped decide the outcome. I just, when you need the officials to even be kind of, now you should expect the officials to be as in the middle as possible, but they're not going to be perfect. The best response I can have is don't get into a 21-0 hole. No. That's the easiest response I can get to. Don't turn the ball over twice. Let them score 2 touchdowns over it and fall down 21-0. That's the best way to try to not lose that game.
Now, I'm going to play this clip from Miles Jack here pretty soon from post-game in the locker room, but I really loved his explanation of literally why he couldn't get out of the way. And for all of the talk about the hit in and of itself, I think there needed to be more talk about the decision-making and literally that split second. Let's not forget, these athletes are running at full steam. They're grown men running at full steam. Like, it's a bang-bang split decision to either go in for that hit or even just the action in and of itself, whether he's going to dive or slide or any of that. Let's listen to Miles Jack and hear his explanation.
It's damn near impossible because it's like throwing a punch and then not catching it as you like. I don't know how to explain it, man. It's like once you commit to something, you know what I mean. There's no way you can pull yourself back out of it. And then I tried to do the best I could, but yeah.
That's it right there. That play is so bang bang, and yeah, in hindsight, of course, you got penalized on it. It's easy to sit here and say he never should have dove or never should have got down there. But that's just the context, I think, of how hard of a decision it is to make that play.
Yeah, I just first off, I miss talking with Miles. Miles is a good guy.
Talked a lot about his hockey franchise. I'll tell you that.
No, I'll tell you what. I would love. I'm a gigantic hockey fan. I would love to talk hockey with him, especially because I've been to Allen Americans games. So, but no, it's definitely cool.
You might see him there now.
Shoot, man! You're not kidding.
Yeah, you might see him around now.
But no, it's those are like. The main thing that I just can't stand, this goes across the board, is that defensive players are not protected nearly enough as offensive players. This isn't even talking about quarterbacks. It's talking about all offensive players, and defensive players have essentially no protection whatsoever. The only way that the NFL is making any kind of stride in protecting defensive players is like what they're doing with all these fines, giving out, to like Jalen Warren and other guys for lowering their helmet.
Connor Hayward.
That's like the furthest it's gone. It's like, okay, well, how about stuff that actually has an impact on the field? How about when Connor McGovern throws his entire body weight into Joey Porter Jr.'s back for no reason? You give him a 15-yard unnecessary roughness call.
See, that would have been one, going back to what Mark asked about interviewing officials. That would have been one where you could have sat there and said, why was there not a call on McGovern? And even then, I think the response would have been something along the lines of, they didn't see it. Or they didn't,
ball carrier right there.
Sometimes they miss those kind of things, though. Or maybe the official that had the play had the wrong angle. I mean, There are so many. Yeah, it is wrong what happened to Joey. I agree, Spy. I thought that was a bad call, bad no call. Should have been called, but it wasn't. So if there was one thing in that game, I think that's what it would have been. Is a question about McGovern. So I really like that topic right there. Yeah. What about defensive coordinator? Ask useless knowledge. You got to evaluate Terrell Austin too at this stage. When you have T.J. Watt, Micah Fitzpatrick, Cam Hayward, albeit injured at varying points of the season, all three of them. And when you have those three guys and your defense is being paid as much as it is, like, how much can you put on injuries and personnel and having to go off the couch for starting safeties and starting linebackers? How much can you put on that as things that affected Terrell Austin and his job? And then how much can you say, well, that's on Terrell Austin? Like the touchdown, for example, the first touchdown of the game, right? The pass to Knox. Patrick Peterson and Landon Roberts ran the wrong way. They ran to the flat where none of them should have, or at least one of them should not have. And that's why Knox was so wide freaking open in the end zone. That's why that play happened. That's not Terrell Austin, unless it is. But it's not Terrell Austin. That is two guys. That's bad communication going to the same spot of the field where maybe one of them or maybe both of them should not have been.
Yeah, I mean, anytime there's miscommunication, obviously it's on the players. But then if it's the one thing you really have to watch out for, and this is whenever all of the like illegal formation penalties were happening with the offense, that's when you have to go back to, okay, is this a coaching issue? Why are these issues constantly creeping up? Why are they constantly happening? This should not be happening. That to me is more of a coaching issue. One miscommunication that might not be on coaching. I think the main issue I have with Terrell Austin and his defense, and I'm definitely speaking more from an offensive mind more than defensive mind here, but from what I can see is that it doesn't look like the Steelers defense does enough to stress the offense. And it's kind of the same situation that the offense does, but it's worse on offense than it is on defense, just because the Steelers do have certain players. If they only rush 4, okay, well, TJ Watt can still get to the quarterback. You know, I'm not worried about that. I'm worried about, okay, if they constantly drop into Tampa 2 and they don't disguise it well enough to drop into Tampa 2, then quarterbacks are going to eat against that all day, because Tampa 2 is kind of an outdated, coverage. It's not completely, it's not a fossil or anything like that. It's not like other teams don't do it. They do. It's how do teams disguise it so that quarterbacks can't see, oh, they're definitely going to Tampa 2 here. How do they disguise it? Do they show like cover 0? Do they show all out blitz, then drop guys back? Now the Steelers have done certain things, but I'm just trying to think of examples of, it just looks like that they can get to a different level when it comes to disguises and when it comes to how they manipulate offenses, because overall across the league, we saw offense kind of take a dip, throughout. And I don't think that's just because all of a sudden Patrick Mahomes turned into a bad quarterback, or all of a sudden like other quarterbacks like Joe Burrow all of a sudden forgot how to play football. I do think that it's some credit to how defensive coordinators are now starting to counterpunch what the trends are offensively.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think there is a legitimate need to look at defensive coordinator. And as Mike says here, Mike Vrabel, get it out of your heads now. He's not going to take a D coordinator job. That's a head coach. That's an NFL head coach.
If for whatever reason he doesn't get a head coaching job, then you swing for the fences on that one. But I would not hold your breath on that one.
Yeah, if it's going to be Mike Vrabel at defensive coordinator, first off,
that's
Mike
your
Tomlin,
dream.
First off, that is a dream. Second off, Mike Tomlin has to move on from Terrell Austin first. Third off, Mike Vrabel.
Believe he's
Third off, Mike Vrabel would not land a head coaching job somewhere, which it's very possible he still could. So, unless Vrabel's picked up in that fashion, I would not expect. that. Frank Reich is a potential offensive coordinator. I mean, look, we're going to have plenty of time to talk names. We're going to have plenty of time to talk candidates. We're going to have plenty of time to talk about what they could potentially bring to the table. We're talking about the formula, and I think the proceedings that the Steelers are either going to go on or what we think could happen here in the next couple of months leading into the draft. And the first step is figuring out what Mike Tomlin's direction is, which it sounds like we pretty much have by this point figured that out. And number 2 is offensive coordinator and getting that guy into the building, and then obviously figuring out the offensive staff and the rest of it, because you never know what that new coordinator is going to want. Teresa asks, what if they move up in the draft and swing for the fences? I'm assuming that's for quarterback. And regardless of what position it's for, like the Steelers showed last year that they're willing to go up if they really like a guy.
Yeah.
And they're willing to make the right move for the right guy. And I think the trade for Broderick Jones, or the pick rather, that they selected Broderick Jones with, I think that trade worked out wonders for them. And at the time, before they made the pick, it was a good deal to move up. When they made the pick, it was obviously a good deal to move up. And Broderick Jones was good for them this year. So if there's a guy they really like and they want to move up from 20, they're going to do it. They'll find a way. Omar Khan has shown he'll find a way to do it.
Just really quick on Terrell Austin. He was promoted to defensive coordinator ahead of the 2022 season. So that would mean that he just completed his second season as defensive coordinator. And typically, and this is what happened with Matt Canada, typically when a guy is promoted from within to a certain position, especially a coordinator job, they get a new contract. And typically head coaches have gotten, when they get a new contract, it's a 4-year contract. And when coordinators get a new contract, it's a 3-year contract. So I don't know this for sure. So this is conjecture on my part based on what I know. It would be that Terrell Austin has another year left on his contract.
Yep.
Unless for whatever reason they did not give him a new contract when they promoted him, then maybe he is off contract now. But that would be something to have to confirm with the team. And I personally have not done that yet. So
I've seen Mark here says we need a center first round. That's on the list of needs, I think. I would be more inclined to go either tackle or offensive tackle, defensive tackle, linebacker, cornerback, center. I think those are the top 5 needs in no particular order right now. I just don't know if center is going to be the first round.
It just depends on what happens with the quarterback. Because if the Steelers absolutely do not, like if they don't get anybody, if they don't acquire whether it be free agency or trade, if they don't acquire Kirk Cousins, Russell Wilson, Justin Fields, any of those established guys who are already in the league, and they somehow do like re-sign Mason Rudolph, and your 1-2 punch is Mason Rudolph and Kenny Pickett, however that is, when you go into the draft, and for whatever reason, if a certain situation comes up where I haven't looked at the order. Whoever's picking 11th calls Omar Khan and says, hey, we'll take this, this, and this. You guys can move up to 11 and take the quarterback we know you want, or whatever it is. And then how do you say no to that if you talk about getting a potential franchise-altering quarterback?
Yep.
This is still, at the end of the day, for all of the other needs the Steelers have, and they absolutely have needs. Tackles 1, centers 1, defensive tackles another 1. They have needs that they have to address. But if quarterback is the most important position, that's not an argument. Somebody said it's a team game yesterday. It absolutely is a team game, but this is a quarterback league.
Yes.
And if you need proof of that, look at what Josh Allen did to that defense.
And by the way, look at I do this every year. Look at the quarterbacks that are left in the AFC and the NFC, okay? Look at how loaded the AFC is. No. Jackson, Allen, Mahomes, Stroud. Are you kidding me?
That's fun for the AFC. I mean, it's not a joke.
Do you think, not you, Chris, you think that Kenny Pickett, Mason Rudolph, Justin Fields, Jaden Daniels, any of those guys, Kirk Cousins, are better or at the level of Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, CJ Stroud? The answer, no, 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 and no. They're not. No. None of those options, as of right now, are better than or equal to those guys. That's what this is also about. Now, could Mason Rudolph be? Who the hell knows? Probably not. Could Kenny Pickett be? Who the hell knows? Probably not. But if you need evidence that this league is a quarterback league, and look at the NFC, by the way. Brock Purdy, Jared Goff, Jordan Love.
Jordan Love, though, I'm telling you what, you were dumping on him quite a bit earlier in the year, but
on him, man.
He is making you eat a lot of crow, man, because he is
Mason Rudolph, though.
He is, yes, but Jordan Love has really turned into, he is looking like a pretty darn good quarterback. Like, not just making right reads, but making phenomenal throws. Yeah, they're doing something special up there in Green Bay. I think that's pretty impressive. I do think, as much as I stress quarterback, I don't think you have to have like one of the top guys or you have no chance of winning. You can win if you have like a tier 2 guy, and I would put like a Kirk Cousins in like that tier 2.
Brock Purdy.
Yeah.
Brock Purdy is tier 2 to me.
Yeah, you can have one of those guys as long as the rest of the supporting cast is really, really strong. And there are parts of the Steelers in which I'm like, okay, yeah, I love the 1-2 punch in the backfield with Najee and Jalen. I love the top 2 of the receiver depth chart with Deontay and George Pickens. I obviously love edge rusher. Liked what I saw from Keanu Benton. Obviously, looks like you got a shutdown corner in Joey Porter Jr. You've got some guys now. Use this offseason to get more guys. And use this draft to get more guys.
Tackle.
There you go.
Did great. Like, there's a lot of pieces here. Let's make no mistake about it. There's a lot of pieces here. And I want to wrap up with a couple quick ones here. Yeah, Brian's right. Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes do not grow on trees.
No, they don't.
And you need to have the right offensive coordinator, the right system to develop a guy. Mm-hmm. Now, can Kenny Pickett still be that? Who the hell knows? The offensive coordinator will dictate that. I love this point from Jim here, and I think it's a good way to close the show. Jim says, really interested to see how Omar Khan's second draft and offseason goes. Abso-fruit-and-lutely. Omar Khan, like let's not forget, okay? There's so much doom and gloom right now, I think, around the Steelers, and I get it. Like, they were a team that underachieved. They're a team that is kind of directionless right now, almost a quarterback. They're a team that there were a lot of outside noise created about Mike Tomlin, even though it was pretty foregone he was going to come back anyway. Like, a lot of talk about the Steelers other than what they could potentially do in this offseason. Everybody, they called him the con artist for a reason in last offseason with the draft and signing Sayamalo and getting Patrick Peterson in and doing what he did over last offseason, bringing Allen Robinson, a veteran, into the receivers room. All of this stuff that Omar Khan did last offseason was ranted and raved about for months. And he got the con artist nickname out of it, and everybody loved what he did. And then things kind of fell flat, and obviously they fired the coordinator, and things went sideways throughout the season. And that's kind of sometimes what just happens. You could build great rosters. Ask the Philadelphia Eagles. Howie Roseman, Jeffrey Lurie built top to bottom one of the best rosters in the entire NFL. And then they got absolutely smoked by Baker freaking Mayfield in Tampa Bay in the first round this past weekend. You could build an outstanding roster and still get smoked in the playoffs. This is how this business works in a very harsh way. But as Jim said, Omar Khan, his first offseason was tremendous as the GM. It's reasonable to believe that if the Steelers are going to improve, that Omar Khan could have another good offseason like that.
Yeah, your GMs are never going to bat 1,000 when it comes to no matter what it comes to. When it comes to certain hires for their staff, the coaching staff, the scouting department, anything else. Obviously, when it comes to free agent signings, who they select in the draft, you're never going to bat 1,000 ever. Mm-hmm. It's how many do the good decisions outweigh the bad decisions? And I think based off of the first offseason, probably the biggest disappointment is that they weren't able to re-sign Cam Sutton. Sure. And for as versatile as Patrick Peterson became down the stretch, you'd still rather have Cam Sutton playing that role than Patrick Peterson, because Cam Sutton right now is a better player than Patrick Peterson is. However, when you look at everything else, you brought it up, Sayamalo, great signing. I mean, a little rough to start the season, but turned into their 100% their best offensive lineman.
I don't think he allowed a sack this year.
No, he did not. He did, and honestly, that's what they brought in Sayamalo in for. They brought him in to be a decent run blocker, which he was, but to mainly be a good pass protector, which he was with Philadelphia. And he was a great pass protector this season. Like you said, didn't allow a sack. And you look through everything else. Obviously, the draft looked great. Broderick Jones, Joey Porter Jr., Keanu Benton, Nick Herbig, Darnell Washington. Those guys contributed in a very positive way. Really good rookie class as of right now. Obviously, you don't judge a rookie class based off of what they did as rookies. You got to judge from what they do off of after 3, 4, 5 seasons, But overall, first impressions, it was a really good first offseason. I'm really curious. It's a really good point to bring it up to really see what Omar does in the second offseason. And like we talked about, after Mike Tomlin addresses the media, whether it be later this week or first thing next week, whenever it is, all attention will turn to who do they hire. Now, granted, that's still more of a Mike Tomlin thing. Who do they hire to OC? But then once they get all that stuff in order, then it'll be Omar Khan's time to roll up the sleeves and get to work. And
Andy Weidel.
Off we go. Andy Weidel too.
And with Andy Weidel.
Andy Weidel is the guy who's in charge of putting the draft board together. Obviously, he'll have a hand in free agency as well. But yeah, it'll be really interesting to see what they do in the second offseason. Again, look at last offseason. This team can turn a corner pretty quickly. That's just the nature of the NFL. You can turn a corner pretty quickly if you have a couple of really good off seasons.
Well, look what the Texans just did. Got the right quarterback, got the right head coach, and now they're one game away from playing in the AFC Championship. They're 2 games away from playing in the Super Bowl.
I've submitted my ballot for the PFW. This will be my final thought. Submitted my ballot for the PFWA awards. Just to kind of, go on that. Both Coach of the Year and Executive of the Year, I went with the Houston guys.
Sure.
I mean,
that's valid.
I mean, I went with DeMeco Ryans. It was close. I almost voted for Stefanski because he deserved it with all the injuries he had to deal with, still getting Cleveland to the record that they did. Thought he did a great job. But DeMeco Ryans turning Houston into what everybody thought they were going to be, into playing in the divisional round. And I mean, legitimate chance. I mean, like legitimate chance of being able to go and make it even to a conference championship game. And then obviously with the way that they built the roster, I gave credit to both Ryans and what's his name? I can't think of the
Caserio.
Thank you, Caserio.
They could beat the Ravens. Like, I would not be stunned if the Texans beat the Ravens at all.
No,
not one bit. Not one.
Ravens are really good though. The two teams that I thought had the best chance of beating the Ravens in the playoffs are out, and that was those were the Browns and the Steelers.
Barber, I remember Mike Tomlin telling a story, and this will be my kind of final thing before we get out of here. About how when he was basically scouting George Pickens, he was down in Athens, Georgia, at the University of Georgia, asking who was the guy they're going to be back for next year. That guy was Broderick Jones. So Mike Tomlin loves his UGA. Mike Tomlin loves his Alabama. He loves his. If you want,
you love the SEC.
If you want, right. But if you want more evidence about Alabama, go back to the week leading into the Texans game when I asked him about scouting Will Anderson and the absolute transcript he gave of an answer about why he loved Will Anderson. That's your indicator of where Mike Tomlin's thinking and where he loves to scout and where he loves to find his talent. All right, we got to get out of here. DK and Ramon are coming up in about 25 minutes. Here where you found this, live on DK Pittsburgh Sports on YouTube. Remember, we're live every Monday through Friday. It's off-season mode time, but there's still tons to talk about.
Darren comes in with the comment of the day, man. Draft Dino for a championship.
Nice
Got to take Dino Tomlin out of Boston College, man. That's going to be the guy that puts that receiving core over the top.
Sure. Go get.
That was hilarious, dude. Good job.
I think part of the fun was manufacturing the pit draft from last year, trying to figure out which one of Kenny's buddies are going to come in. By the way,
man,
Kalijah Cansey, woo! He's come along really good for the Buccaneers. Really nice.
Jordan Addison looked really good in Minnesota.
Yes, he did. Either one of those pit guys. I mean, they got a good one in Broderick Jones first round. Let's not. Revise history, but
let's just see if he actually plays left tackle next season.
Well, we'll find out. There's a long road ahead, and we'll have those answers within months. But for today, on the day, start working on your golf coverage. Funny enough, Brent, I talked to DK in brief about a certain US Open that is coming to town. You never know.
That's right.
You never know.
That's right.
That
the
would
US
be
Open is going to be there.
That would be one thing that is a bucket list cover it item is the US Open for me. I love golf. I've always played it. I've always loved it.
The biggest, the dream tournament for me, no matter what, is obviously Augusta for the Masters.
Yeah.
But US Open, that would be pretty darn cool for sure. That would be St. Andrews for the British Open too.
Love Alex, love Taylor, love you, Chris. Obviously, Jose coming along. I want it. I want that. I want Oakmont, baby. I want it. That's my plea. That's my pledge. Yeah, Mr. CJ Jr. says, nice to see Corey made it to work for a change. Yeah, You know what? It is. It's nice to be back. It's nice to be back and not on the road. And it's nice to not be caught in snow and back in some warmth. Listen, I had heat issues in this place that I live in. I had heat issues last night. I was seeing breath last night. I'm thankful to be back under a roof, under heat, home. It's nice. It's good to be home. We have a long off season ahead of us.
Darren trying to correct it's well, if we really want to get completely technical, it's the Open Championship, technically. But I mean, I'm just talking about. It's in British. It's in Britain. It's in the United Kingdom.
The United Kingdom.
It's the Open that's in Britain.
Peaky Blinders cap, Darren. I think that was about
St. Andrews would be cool though because my stepmom's Scottish, and so I've always wanted to go to Scotland, and St. Andrews is awesome.
No Peaky Blinders cap, but Chris, I think you know this from a certain movie franchise.
Oh,
come on!
Oh yeah.
Come on,
yeah. I'm not as like when it comes to like all of the stuff that could be classified as nerds. I'm not as hip and up to date on the Harry Potter stuff. I'm just not.
So for those listening, I have a Herbology shirt on as a note to Harry Potter, as a nod to Harry Potter, and as a nod to my significant other who bought this shirt for me, and I really like it. So, all right, CJ says appreciate you guys. Well, we appreciate you all. Again, live Monday through Friday, 3 Eastern, DK Pittsburgh Sports on YouTube. Darren, that's awesome.
Jealous.
Darren, that's awesome. We'll have to revisit that point when we have more time this off season to talk about your trips to Scotland. We'll have to do that. But for now, DK and Ramon in 20 minutes. He's Chris Halicke. He's over here. I feel like it's mirrored. I'm Corey Crisan. This has been the Southside Beat. Cheers, everybody. Have a wonderful day.